Facebook, and we are really celebrating first the fact that we all woke up this morning physically. You know, sometimes you get to a certain age, and that in itself is a miracle. And we're also here at this point in this space to wake up spiritually. So we're doing a double awakening, much like a double birth. So to bring this into a more meaningful, direct experience, we are looking to always switch channels when we come into this space. If you've been here for any service in the past, you know that we work through the gamut of spiritual teachings, esoteric traditions of the ancient, the modern, the postmodern, and we use them as tools, as a symbol system to elicit a direct experience within you. So we are not in any way adhering to a dogma or a strict set of beliefs that are rigid and fixed in place and time. In fact, what we're trying to do is dislodge this fixed belief in the rigidity of time and space and open us up to something far more grand. I guess now would be a good time to plug my class on Seth that's coming up. Tuesday, July 12th, we do start a 10-week Zoom study on Seth Speaks. If you're familiar with Seth, became big in the 1970s when it was first channeled by Jane Roberts, opens you up to this kaleidoscopic view of the soul and gives you an insight into how you're making your moment, you're making your environment, you're making everything that you experience through your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions, that you are a divine being having amnesia. And so we're going to explore Seth, but we're going to do it coinciding with A Course in Miracles. So it's going to be a really good way of understanding not only the vastness of the material that Seth presents, but how it's anchored in this liberation teaching that A Course in Miracles also lays out. So if you want more info on that, you can go to my website, living-acim.com. I can't say anymore because I'm getting nauseous from marketing myself. I really do detest that. But I know that what we're about here is giving you this quality experience of yourself. And so what we're going to look at today, kind of still going into this idea of a bit of humor, is, associate humor to what I'm going to say next. The Last Judgment. Real fun times. So we're going to look at the Last Judgment, but we're going to look at it in a very different lens, right? So it's all in how you're interpreting something that gives it the meaning that it has for you, right? So we're all interpreting this moment in a way that we don't know how anybody else is interpreting it, but the way we are interpreting it is very unique. But we can only really come at this moment or experience this moment in two ways. There are only two options in how we can experience and interpret this moment. The first option, or thought system, would be to assume in this moment that you're a separate physical body having this human experience all alone in your own thought world, your private world, and you're looking out from your five senses. And that is just the given of what comes next. Your interpretations are now all set within the context, matrix, or world, or framework of a separate self experiencing this moment all alone and disconnected from all other living things. So that's one framework or paradigm that you can choose. Now, this is really important because up until the second awakening, really coming into a deeper understanding and insight of how everything is actually a selection or a choice, we don't assume we're choosing being a separate body until we start to wake up. And that can be in itself quite earth-shattering to realize that you're choosing to see this moment as a separate being. The other choice that you can make when you begin to cultivate a spiritual awareness is that you are not separate. You are actually joined with the source of love, the power of consciousness, and you are interwoven or interbeing with all living things. In fact, all living things are aspects of yourself. and you're not in any way hindered or hampered or held back by the boundary of your skin. You're actually able to permeate all things, everywhere, all the time. And that's a very different paradigm. One is based in separation, the other based in unity consciousness. Now, the Last Judgment plays into this idea or paradigm shift, because that's what's required. You need to shift from being an isolated, separate self, all alone in your own mind in a separate world that's out of your control, to a completely different paradigm where you are consciousness itself making your moment from an awareness that choice is literally projected your environment. And you can, moment by moment, choose to project a different environment, which would usher in a completely different world. And that is really what we're getting when we look at the apocalypse or the Last Judgment. Okay? And to put a nice little happy twist to this, when you think of the Last Judgment, think about going on vacation. Okay? Because that's really what it is. You're vacating a paradigm of consciousness. You're leaving the place where you formerly resided. And you're relocating. You're going on a trip, more than you can possibly imagine, to another location or another paradigm of consciousness. Now, what's interesting about this word vacate, where we get vacation from, is vacate means to leave, right? That's the first definition. You just leave, you go. But there's a legal definition of the term vacate, and that is when you legally vacate, that legalese meaning of vacate is that you annul, you cancel out a judgment, a contract, or any kind of charge that you've had before. So you're legally set free from a judgment, a contract, or a charge. So we can play with all these terms very nicely. They're very helpful symbols to elicit what the nuances are when you're vacating the ego paradigm and awakening to your spiritual paradigm. You're canceling out the judgments that you formerly were unaware that you had about yourself and about the world. And keep in mind, and this is really an important part to get in all of our story time this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is that your mind has never ceased to be one with its native cause, its original cause. And its original cause is divine will and creativity. So even though your mind is asleep within the paradigm of separation, it never ceases to create. You're always creating. He tells us this in A Course in Miracles. He says your mind is more powerful than you can imagine, and it never ceases to create, even when you're asleep. And the way that it creates, and you got to hear this clearly, the way that your mind creates is that you charge, you infuse with belief certain thoughts, ideas, emotions, expectations. And when you charge those with belief, now they don't even have to be conscious now. Once you do it, they go into the subconscious or the unconscious mind, but they'll still be at work in the space, manifesting your environment, the events, the situations, the people that you're interacting with. You brought yourself here. You're making this moment for yourself. So whenever you're infusing something with belief, it's being projected out. Now, if you're doing this unconsciously within the ego paradigm, you're miscreating. You're an unconscious creator, as Seth would call you. An unconscious creator makes trouble for him or herself, because an unconscious creator doesn't distinguish or has the insight to discern the helpful from the unhelpful, the skillful from the unskillful, the wholesome from the unwholesome, the constructive from the destructive thoughts. If you just mash positive and negative together, life-affirming and life-denying, harmful and harmless, light and dark thoughts, you mash those together and you infuse them with equal belief, you're going to have a mixed up and crazy world. Now here's the rub. We are all focal points of this divine consciousness. We are all creators. Whether you want to admit this to yourself or not, it's just what's so. You'll come to realize this sooner or later. You're making your moment, and you're projecting your thought world, and so too is everyone else. That's why the world looks the way it does. You know, he says in A Course in Miracles that this world is actually the screen, like a movie screen, wherein everyone who is an unconscious creator is projecting their own internal conflict that they're having with themselves. And as a result, we are all collectively projecting our insanity. And that's why the world looks the way it does. It's a collective projection of insanity. And the only way you can heal this is you must undergo the apocalypse, the last judgment, the paradigm shift from being an unconscious creator to a conscious creator. So just a little bit about that before we get into some of Kabir's poetry this morning. Let's see here. So the Course emphasizes, I'm reading from A Course in Miracles, the Manual for Teachers. The Course emphasizes that to teach is to learn. So you are always teaching. Teaching is a constant process. In other words, what you project from your thought world, you believe. Now here's what's really important also for you to understand clearly. Nothing is happening to you from out there, somehow haphazard and out of your control. What's happening is your own thoughts are being represented in situations, events, and people. And they are coming back to you as this cause and effect feedback mechanism that is the world. So he says this, you are only teaching yourself. Now it gets even better. You're teaching yourself the self that you believe is true. So let's wipe away all the complexity of how your thoughts look in terms of all the minutia of your life. Wipe all that away for a second. You're either teaching yourself that you're separate from love and the source of love, and you're a self that is somehow an aberration, disconnected from love, right? And when you feel disconnected from love, mind you, you're going to feel anxiety, a sense of depression, helplessness, pain, mental and physical. It's going to manifest in your body and mind as a lack of love, and lack of love will take a multitude of forms. And those forms will then be projected as your environment. Okay? You're teaching yourself that self, or you're teaching yourself another version of yourself, the self that is connected to love, the self that is not separate from love. Now listen to what he says in regards to this. Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are. Okay, did you hear that? Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are and what they are to you. You see, this is a feedback. When we're not taking responsibility as the projector of our environment, and where everything is really a representation of our own inner world, then it really appears that others are separate from us, and we are not responsible. So what we have then is this recognition that we are not only teaching ourselves what we are and teaching others what we are, but we're teaching what others are to us. So then he goes on, he says, it is the teaching underlying what you say that teaches you. So whatever you're saying to someone, oh, your hair looks great today, Stephanie. You like mine? Whatever you're saying, it could be as casual as how your hair looks. I'm also teaching you who I am and what I'm saying underneath that, and I'm teaching myself who you are for me. There is a hidden or a deeper message that's being broadcast through the language, no matter what we're saying at the surface. Can you please pass the salt? There is also in that moment communication. I am a separate self. I'm miserable, all alone and afraid. Thanks for the salt. Or everyone is truly in a state of grace and peace forever. They're just confused about who you are, and you can shift that in a moment. Thank you so much. So if the teaching is underlying what you say all the time, how you open a door, how you give the money to the person at the toll booth. It's always the teaching. That's why it's really 101 to get that we are either making a hell for ourselves, moment by moment, or we're liberating ourselves and others, moment by moment. Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. This is why, and I said this last week, I'm so grateful for you guys to come here and those who are joining on Facebook, listening and giving their time and their attention and their willingness to take these ideas and see if they're valuable and helpful for you in your life. That is a gift beyond measure that you're giving to me. I am indebted to you, whether you look at it this way or not. It is a win-win, I would hope. But the fact that I am able to teach you who I am and teach you who I think you are at where we're coming from in this service is what will actually heal the world for everyone. And it doesn't make me special. It actually simply illustrates that I've chosen another paradigm of thought to teach myself. And you've chosen that paradigm of thought. And together we reinforce it for one another, strengthen it in our own minds, and as a result, whether we're sleeping or awake, we're broadcasting it. We're teaching it in everything we think, say, and do. Now, this is important, too, when he talks about teaching as a way of diminishing self-doubt. Now, this is where, there's always the flip side of what you could teach yourself, right? You can teach yourself that you're the ego rather than the higher self. So, you could actually teach yourself that you're the ego to end your doubt that you're not the ego. And you can use people, quite literally, to reinforce for you that you are the ego, you are separate, you are unlovable, you are lonely, you are desperate, you are vicious, you are sad, you are depressed. So this is why the last judgment plays in here, because what we have to do is undergo a reevaluation of all our values. The Last Judgment is simply a way that Jesus refers to this selectivity that must come about in your own thinking. Because look at your relationships and look at your self-talk. What are you teaching yourself? What are you teaching others about who you are? What are you teaching them as to who they are for you? If it is in any way within the spectrum of the ego's way of thinking, depressive, illness-based, death-bound, separate, all alone, unforgivable, etc., pick your poison, then you have to undergo this reevaluation and choose again to actually judge for the last time that you're not going to make those beliefs real and charge them with your psychic energy and thereby manifest them in your relationships, your environment, and the events that you're experiencing. You have to go through what he calls in the Course a sorting out process. Otherwise, you're going to keep mashing together these irreconcilable ideas or paradigms and manifesting endless confusion for yourself. Do you see how this is all an inside job? This is, one of the things that we are unconsciously very skillful at when we're identified as the separate self. The separate self, in the Freudian sense, has a defense set up where it's an externalization defense. Everything good and bad is out there. There's really nothing going on in here. Everything that I need that's good must be acquired out there. The teacher, the guru, the book, the religion, the temple. Somehow I got to go out there and find that goodness. Or everything that's bad is out there. Those who deserve the ire, the judgment, and the disdain, who are truly wrong and truly guilty. So this externalization defense is what's set up within the mind when it obeys unconsciously the ego paradigm. You can test this. This is why the Buddhist teaching is still so relevant for today. You go within, you test how you're thinking. You look at how you're thinking. One of the sure ways to see what needs to be sorted out and discarded and judged as unworkable in your life is if you in any way are making somebody else the scapegoat, and this is the ego's plan for salvation. So the way he describes it in the Course in one of the workbook lessons, I think you'll like it. The ego's plan for salvation is everyone else has to change, not you. If only they were different, I would be happy. If only we had a better government, if only they passed better laws, if only they took care of us, with health care or whatever it may be, I would be happy. It just would be what's the missing piece for me. And that is the ego's plan for salvation. Not you, always out there. And this plays into this teaching-learning paradigm that we were talking about. You can actually get so hypnotized by this way of thinking, it's always them that needs to change. I'm really not that bad of a person. I'm kind of innocent. I'm just upset sometimes because of all the insanity that's going on in the world. And if it changed, I would be a better person. I'm not projecting it. So the ego can actually become so real and valid and sure in your thinking of this is how you are, and you can fall into the justification and the logic and the believability of its claims and look out from this moment as if that's just the way life is. There are a lot of crazy people out there that need to change. And what that does is it sets up your curriculum that you'll now teach. You're going to teach that. It's an us versus them paradigm. And you see that everywhere, in all shades. Us versus them. Good versus bad. Right versus wrong. The woke versus the conservative. All of these paradigms are all based within a separation complex. The only way out of that is you have to actually begin to teach something different, that we're actually underneath all of these superficial distinctions and labels and body identities. We're actually the one consciousness collectively manifesting our environment. We're the one mind. We're one being in a multitude of disguises that could actually be paradise with all of these trees of life that we are, instead of a hell. So what has to change is stop teaching yourself you're the ego. And you'll find that as you begin to undo these beliefs, that you're going to undergo an apocalypse. That the apocalypse is a Greek word you probably know, which means to unveil. You'll unveil to yourself your own inner radiance, Christ mind, Buddha consciousness, love itself, radiating at the core of your being. What kept you barred or blocked from that Eden within your own heart were the mishmashing of confused and conflicted ideas of good and bad that were being projected unconsciously and blocking you from your own heart. Right? So we're going to look today, that was my introduction. A lot of coffee this morning. Oh, well, before we go, a final note on the intro. Listen to this. Everyone who follows the world's curriculum, that is the ego paradigm, and everyone here does follow it until he or she changes his or her mind. What's the world's curriculum? Well, you teach yourself, you teach solely to convince yourself that you are who you're not. That's the world's curriculum. You stay asleep to your own inner radiance and divine inheritance as an expression of creativity of the prime creator, of love itself. So he then says, this is the purpose of the world. The purpose of the world is to have you get so caught up in the dramas, in the conflicts, in the problems that are happening out there. And my God, do we have a host to choose from? That you get so baited and hooked by these conflicts, and you take your side and you polarize and you now have an enemy to attack and hate. That's the world's purpose, is to keep you caught in this divisive paradigm of war, hatred, blame. And so the purpose of this curriculum that we come here to learn is to undo that, to judge it, not in anyone else, but in ourselves, and finally let it go so we can unveil the real self and extend the real world. Okay? You signed up for this, whether you know it or not. Okay, so here's Kabir. Discard me and mine and yours. Abandon rites and rituals. Soar above all caste or class distinctions. Strive to attain the formless through the one with form. Do these, says Kabir, and you'll never sink, but swim across this tormented ocean to the shores of divine bliss. So discard me and mine and yours. Get out of this selfishly motivated paradigm of craving and clinging. And this is really what I wanted to focus in on this poem. Soar above all class distinctions and strive to attain the formless through the one with form. In other words, begin to see all beings, all people, as embodiments of the formless divinity that they are living temples of the light of God. And as you begin to change your paradigm and no longer see them as a separate being, but actually look for the light that is at their core, you're teaching yourself who you are. You will then begin, and this is not hocus pocus, you'll begin to unveil the light in them. Because what you want to see will be revealed in them. You'll see it. Jesus says in the Course, it begins as a little spark. You begin to see a little light in your brothers and sisters. And as you begin to cultivate this kind of vision, that little light begins to grow. And it begins to shine in great rays until it actually shines around the body. It eclipses the body. And you'll see everyone is actually this brilliant sun of divine radiance manifesting the body. Not the body, but manifesting the body. That's who you can choose to teach yourself to be and see it in others. And then you would get out of these class distinctions and identities that are all fixated on the physical body. That is a complete illusion. No peace there. Only division. Only love is real, and it cannot be found in body identities. It has to be seen where it is and what it is, and that is the formless higher self. You must choose that, he says. And if you do, you'll never sink, but swim across the tormented ocean to the shores of divine bliss. Now, Kabir kind of gives a little bit of a headline for our times here. He starts by saying, the terrible time is here. Don't be blind. Really important to get. I'm so, like I said, indebted to you that you come here, you give your time, your attention, whether virtually or physically, to listen. And when Kabir says, don't be blind, that just makes all these bells go off for me. Because in order to get out of the false paradigm, which the world is teaching your mind constantly, which is one of conflict, us versus them, you have to open your eyes. And that will, remember we said, this will permeate your life, how you pay the toll keeper and how you open a door. It's also going to infuse the way that you look at politics and institutional belief systems. You'll wake up. The scales will fall off your eyes. The conflict is happening at a level that you're never told about. It's actually manufactured. It's manufactured. And there are very few who stand to profit when we are in conflict within this paradigm. Not that we're blaming or judging anybody out there, but you have to wake up. You have to look. All right, I am going to step into controversy right now as an example. And I don't want this to derail where we are in this pure space, but as an example of this manufactured drama and bedlam and social unrest that we are currently seeing. There was a bill that was drafted called the Freedom of Choice Act, which would legislate at the federal level that abortion could never be altered within the states. Okay? Obama in 2007 said that the first thing, you can go on YouTube and look at the video, the first thing he's going to do if he gets elected president is sign the Freedom of Choice Act, because he has executive power to do that anytime he wanted, which would then give no room for the states to argue or set their own agendas with abortion. He gets in, you can watch the video, fast forward, it's not my priority now. Joe Biden ran on this very same platform. He will, if elected, sign the Freedom of Choice Act, and we wouldn't have any questions or doubts about abortion as a law. The Supreme Court would have to honor it. The president could have done that. Two Democratic presidents chose not to do that. So, lo and behold, here we are in this foment of manufactured conflict. Wake up. You know, Terence McKenna said long ago, culture is not your friend. The government is not your friend. They are not fighting for you. They're not looking out for your rights and your benefits. They're not trying to help anybody at the grassroots level. They only work for their donors. Period. So don't be blind. And both parties, more or less, serve the same donors. Where was I? Again, it is a projection of our own belief system. We will change this. We must. Nobody else will. But you have to wake up. You can't turn on corporate news in whatever silo you've put yourself, right or left, and think that's the truth. You got to wake up. This is all a scam. When you wake up, you're going to be like that full-grown elephant that's been tethered by a rope in the ground. It's going to be like, what was I waiting for? Why did I allow this? No more. But here's the thing, and I see it a lot, and maybe it's occurring in this room, I don't know. But there is, you know, when you're kidnapped and you begin to actually want to defend your kidnappers, what's that called? What is it? No, it's, I'll think of it probably after service. But here's the thing. We get so bought into our team and our paradigm of believing and rooting for a certain group that we refuse to look. And we get offended. And we actually defend what's harming life. Look, don't be blind, and don't kill the messenger. So the terrible time is here. Don't be blind, but don't despair. Pray for the eyes that see. And see that He's holding our hands as we stagger through the fields of fire. We'll make it through. We'll make it through. So Kabir continues, weigh your actions on the scale of your own mind. Only, always be honest. So this is a major criterion for your spiritual awakening: self-honesty and a weighing of your beliefs. You're going to have to examine what you believe. You're going to have to look at what you've given your value to, and time and attention. And in this sorting out process, he tells us in the Manual for Teachers and A Course in Miracles, in this sorting out process, as you begin to look at what you invested your belief in and what has been valuable for you, he says most of it's going to go. When your eyes open, you'll realize that you have been sort of bought into these false ideas that were unexamined, but you just bought them, gulped them down without insight or discernment. So self-honesty has to become a rigorous, robust process in your self-examination. Because remember, we're not setting up an us versus them at all. But we have to get out of the paradigm of deceit and lies. We've been deceiving and lying to ourselves, teaching ourselves what we're not. And because we've been doing that at an unconscious level, you have the snake oil salesmen that will come as your representatives to sell you a bill of goods to keep confirming for you you are who you're not, and creating insanity as your world. Honesty with yourself. So then he says, lying destroys at the root, so go and earn the diamond of truth. Right? Y'all still with me? If you want to be wise, don't believe the ego mind. The robber's in the house of your heart, my friend. Be awake now. Don't forget your reality. Remember, earth and sky are just one big stage for such a mind, and that its trap of lies yawns in all directions, ready to ensnare the soul. Yoga and chanting, ascesis and pilgrimage, fasting, alms, the 9 forms of devotion, Vedas and Quran, all these are just fancy rags. Ooh. The ego mind loves to prance around in. So Kabir, of course, talking to his audience, Hindus and Muslims boast about heaven when death's at their throat. Hearts so filled with false pride, they drown where there's no water. So to put it in our cultural framework, we're seeing our chosen sacred cows, not the Vedas and the Quran, but what's sacred to you, right? Social justice, gun rights, abortion. I mean, I might as well go full controversy here today. So all these are just fancy rags that the ego likes to prance around in. Don't be blind. I'm trying to give you your money's worth. I mean, you can go to a million other churches and stay asleep. The world's blind and mad. Don't be blind and mad with it, or you'll just run after the others, running from the truth, to follow the lethal lies of the mind. All you have to do is look around you to see how they end up. So in the Gita, Krishna said at one point, your mind can be your greatest friend or your worst enemy. If your mind is set to waking up and you want to teach yourself awakening and you will see the light in others, and no longer give belief to the paradigm of conflict and judgment, your mind will be your best friend. Otherwise, it sets pitfalls for you. And then finally here, Gods come and go, that remains. Universe explode, that never changes. Why love anything less than the always real? Just one glimpse of who you are, and you'll see everything else is unworthy of your essential dignity. Meanwhile, for 1,000,000 lives, you go on, believing your role in a bad play, in an unreal theater. Wake up. Take off the makeup. Stop talking. Get this one. Peel off your face. Peel off your face so his face appears. The apocalypse. Believing your role in a bad play, in an unreal theater. That's this world. When you peel off your face and see that you are divine consciousness, you will still be in the theater, but the whole storyline will change. It will really usher in a completely new world. But it must begin with each and every one of us. You must do this. No one else can. You must be courageous enough to sort out what is harmful from what is harmless in your own mind, and no longer want to embody that, no longer want to see that, and wherever you do, forgive it. Remember, I'm only teaching myself. I'm only talking to myself. And can it be challenging at times? Sure it can. But the hand of the invisible helper will always come in, even when you're at your lowest, your weakest, when you're struggling just to find the strength to get out of bed. That hand will come in, that help, that breath, that presence. It's always there for whenever you call. Now give me your money. Blue bag's going to go around. The church and I thank you very much. If you're joining us on Facebook, you can go to the link in the description box and click on. Just make sure you're clicking for the 8 a.m. service, and we're grateful for your offerings. Thank you. Anybody want to speak up? I'll probably really be talking to myself next week. All right. One sec, we'll bless the offering, and then we'll love to hear from you, Christine.
No,
yep. Wait, say again? Oh, it was on the tip of my tongue. I mean, I say it often enough to know it. Stockholm syndrome. Thank you. That was it. There you go. Blessing the offering, we are very grateful for the gifts, and we charge them with the intention that they be seeds for a world where all beings may know themselves as happy and free. And so it is. Amen. Anybody else? Did you have a good meal this morning? Yes? A little spicy? All right. Remember, I say this often. This is really just a 60-minute preamble to our Monday night class. So if you want to go into these paradigms and principles and see how they play out in your life, we have a sacred circle that meets 7:15, a Course in Miracles study in the classroom tomorrow night, 7:15. Join us. Deborah. It's all a matter of willingness, and I would say that and anywhere, and it's really a matter of willingness, and honestly, a lot of the material that you'll get in the front of the book isn't as poetic and beautiful as what you'll see that comes in the later chapters. So some of that idea that it gets harder as you go along, I wouldn't agree with. I think it's kind of, self-reflective throughout. It's a glorious yes. Come and join us. Yes. So let's rise. We'll seal the deal here. Coming into the place of the heart, where we want to open with this honest introspection in our spiritual practice. May we be motivated to do this week. May we call in the help that is needed to bring light and strength to our awakening process, that we may know the real from the unreal, what is truly loving. And so in this place within the heart, we rest in this moment, open to grace, knowing that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Namaste. Blessings, joy, and love. Be the change.